I should burn your father's memory the way he burned mine, my stepmother hissed, snatching the wooden box from my hands. I stood frozen in the dim light of my father's study, the smell of his cigars still lingering despite his body being lowered into Boston soil just hours earlier. 10 years of silence between us, ended by a heart attack and a strange clause in his will. A clause that left me nothing but this weathered box while Helen and my half-sister Rebecca walked away with millions. "Give it back," I said, my voice steadier than my hands. The funeral reception murmured beyond the closed door, family members and business associates mingling over expensive whiskey and hollow condolences. Helen's face twisted into something ugly. "You disappeared for a decade, Daniel. You don't get to show up now and claim anything." She clutched the box against her designer black dress, her diamond bracelet catching the light, a bracelet I recognized as my mother's. "The will specifically named me for that box. Nothing else." I stepped forward. "I didn't come for money." "Then why did you come? To make peace with a dead man?" She laughed coldly. "Even death won't give you what you want." My half-sister Rebecca appeared in the doorway, her eyes red-rimmed from what I suspected were practiced tears. At 32, she was 10 years younger than me, the replacement child after I'd been effectively exiled from the family. "Mom, everyone's asking for you," she said, then spotted the box. "What's that?" "Nothing important," Helen snapped, but her grip tightened around it. "Just some worthless keepsakes your father wanted Daniel to have." That's when I noticed it, the slight tremble in her fingers, the way her eyes kept darting to the desk drawer. This box wasn't nothing, and she was terrified of what was inside. I lunged forward and grabbed it, the weight of it surprising me. Helen's manicured nails scraped against my wrist, drawing blood, but I pulled back, clutching it to my chest. "Franklin," she screamed, and the family lawyer appeared almost instantly, as if he'd been hovering nearby. His pinched face showed no surprise at the scene, only calculation. "Mrs. Morgan, please." His voice was soft but carried authority. The reading of the will was quite clear. "The box belongs to Daniel." Helen's face contorted with rage. "You promised, Mrs. Morgan." The warning in his tone shut her up instantly, which interested me. What power did this meek attorney hold over my imperious stepmother? Rebecca stepped between us. "Daniel, please. Today of all days. Today of all days is exactly when the truth matters." I replied, backing toward the door with the box. "Dad wanted me to have this. The question is, why do you care so much about stopping me?" The room went silent. Franklin adjusted his glasses nervously. Helen's rage transformed into something more controlled and more dangerous. "Open it then," she said with sudden calm. "Open it right here, in front of us." The shift in her demeanor made me pause. Whatever was in this box, her strategy had changed from preventing me from having it to watching me discover its contents. I didn't like that. "I think I'll open it in private." "Coward," she whispered. "Just like your father." I turned and walked out, feeling their eyes boring into my back. The murmuring crowd of mourners parted as I moved through them, box under arm. I caught snippets of hushed conversations. The estranged son hasn't spoken to Richard in a decade. Heard he's a failed writer living in some dingy apartment. My father's oldest friend, Senator Harrison, caught my eye as I passed. For a moment, I thought I saw something like warning in his gaze, but he quickly looked away, drawn into conversation by a woman I didn't recognize. Outside, the November air bit through my cheap suit. I hadn't been able to afford something more appropriate for my father's funeral, a fact that hadn't gone unnoticed by the Boston elite filling our family home. I hailed a cab, giving the address of my downtown hotel. "Morgan Estate?" the driver asked, eyeing my formal attire in the rearview mirror. "Heard about the big funeral today. Richard Morgan was something else." "Yes," I replied, staring at the box on my lap. "He certainly was." The driver sensed my mood and fell silent. I traced the edges of the box with my fingertips, feeling areas worn smooth from handling. It had a simple brass latch but no lock. Whatever secrets it contained, my father hadn't physically secured them. He'd used me as the lock, knowing I was the last person Helen would want anywhere near the family's affairs. Back in my hotel room, I placed the box on the bed and stared at it. Part of me wanted to open it immediately, but another part, the part that had spent 10 years building a life away from the Morgan name, wanted to throw it in the trash unopened. Nothing good had ever come from my father's gifts. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Don't open it alone. Not safe." I froze, staring at the screen. Another text followed. Meet me. Doyle's Pub, 8 p.m. The old family housekeeper, Agnes, was the only person who came to mind. She'd squeezed my arm during the service, whispering that she'd kept my room exactly as I'd left it, despite Helen's orders to clear it out. But Agnes was in her 70s now and had never sent a text in her life. I took a quick shower, changing into jeans and a sweater. The box seemed to watch me from the bed, patient after what had likely been years of waiting. I wrapped it in my jacket and tucked it into my backpack before heading out. Doyle's was a working-class Irish pub, far from the polished establishments the Morgan family frequented. I chose a corner booth with a view of the door and ordered a whiskey. At 8:15, Agnes walked in. She'd changed out of her funeral clothes into a simple gray dress, her white hair pulled back in its usual bun. Despite her age, she moved with purpose, scanning the room before spotting me. Her face showed no surprise, only relief. "You came," she said, sliding into the booth across from me. "And you brought it. How did you get my number?" "Your father gave it to me years ago. Said I should only use it if something happened to him." She ordered tea when the waitress came by, then leaned forward. "Have you opened it?" I shook my head. "I got your text." "Good." Her eyes darted around the pub. "Not here. It's not safe." "Agnes, what's going on?" "It's just a box of keepsakes." She gave me a look I remembered from childhood, the one that told me I was being particularly dense. If that's all it was, Helen wouldn't have tried to keep it from you. "How do you know about that?" "I know everything that happens in that house," she said simply, "including what happened to make you leave." The whiskey turned bitter in my mouth. "That's ancient history." "No," Agnes said firmly. "It's very much present. That's why your father left you the box." She sipped her tea, grimacing at its weakness. "Your father changed in the last year. Started going through old papers, making calls late at night. Helen was suspicious, had Rebecca spying on him. Then 2 months ago, he changed his will. Only told Franklin what was in it. And now he's left me a mysterious box that has Helen terrified." I leaned back. "What am I supposed to do with that?" "Open it," Agnes said. "But not alone, and not anywhere Helen might find you. She doesn't know where I'm staying." Agnes gave me that look again. "Doesn't she?" A chill ran through me. Of course Helen would know. The Morgan family didn't leave details like that to chance. "Come with me," Agnes said, rising with surprising agility. "I have a place." I hesitated, then followed her out. We walked 2 blocks before she hailed a cab, giving an address in Dorchester, a neighborhood my father would have never set foot in. The apartment building was modest but clean. Agnes led me to a 3rd-floor unit and unlocked it with a key from her purse. "My sister's place," she explained. "She's in Florida for the winter." Inside, she turned on lights and gestured to the dining table. "There. Open it." I placed the box down, studying it once more in the light. Made of dark walnut, it had the Morgan family crest subtly carved into its top, an oak tree with exposed roots. "Your mother's family gave this to them as a wedding gift," Agnes said softly, "to hold important family documents." I finally flipped the latch and lifted the lid. Inside, nestled in faded velvet, lay several items. A sealed envelope with my name written in my father's unmistakable handwriting, a small leather journal, a USB drive, and beneath them all, a yellowed newspaper clipping. I reached for the envelope first, but Agnes put her hand on mine. "The clipping," she said. "Start there." I pulled out the brittle newspaper piece. It was from the Boston Globe, dated nearly 40 years ago. Financial prodigy Richard Morgan acquires failing Thompson Industries in surprise move. "I don't understand," I said, skimming the article about my father's early business triumph. "This is just about Dad buying out his first major company." "Look at the photo," Agnes insisted. The grainy image showed my young father shaking hands with an older man, presumably Thompson, with a group of men in suits standing behind them. Nothing unusual. "The third man from the left," Agnes said quietly. I peered closer, and my blood ran cold. Standing slightly behind my father was a young man who looked eerily familiar. Like looking at my own reflection, but with subtle differences. Same jawline, same eyes, but not me. Not possible. "Who was that?" I whispered. "That," Agnes said heavily, "is Richard Morgan. Your father." I stared at her, uncomprehending. "What are you talking about?" "My father was Richard Morgan." Agnes shook her head slowly. "The man you knew as your father, the man we buried today, was Charles Morgan, Richard's younger brother." The room seemed to tilt. "That's not possible." "Open the letter," Agnes said. With shaking hands, I broke the seal on the envelope and unfolded several pages of heavy stationery. Daniel, if you're reading this, I've finally done what I should have done years ago, told you the truth. And then, in typical Morgan fashion, died before facing the consequences. I am not your father. Richard Morgan, my older brother, was. The man in that newspaper photo. He and your mother, Elizabeth, were married in 1980. You were born in 1982. I was your uncle, your godfather. Nothing more. In 1985, Richard discovered financial irregularities in the company accounts. He was planning to expose several board members for embezzlement, powerful men with political connections. I warned him not to, but Richard was always righteous to a fault. The night before he was to present his evidence, there was an accident on the North Shore Road. Richard's car went over the guardrail. His body was never found. I was with your mother when the police came. She collapsed in my arms. You were just 3, asking for your daddy. In the coming weeks, as the investigation stalled and was eventually ruled an accident, Elizabeth and I grew closer. The board appointed me as interim CEO, Richard's replacement. A year later, Elizabeth and I married. I adopted you legally, and we agreed never to tell you that I wasn't your biological father. A clean break, a fresh start. I convinced myself it was for the best. That Richard was gone, and you needed a father. That I could protect you both in ways Richard couldn't. What I'm about to tell you will destroy whatever memory of me you've preserved, but you deserve to know. 2 years ago, I received a package. Inside was evidence that Richard's accident was staged. The brakes had been tampered with. There were photos of the car being pushed over the cliff after Richard had been removed from it. In the photos, I recognized 2 men who still sit on our company's board. The final photo was dated 1995 years after his death. It showed Richard, alive, in a facility I later identified as a private psychiatric hospital in Switzerland. The message was clear. I had built my life on my brother's grave, and someone knew it wasn't even a real grave. I've spent the last 2 years quietly investigating, using private channels. The journal contains everything I've found. The USB drive has copies of all the evidence, including financial records that show massive payments from our company to that Swiss facility until 2015. Daniel, I believe your real father was alive until at least 2015. He may still be alive now. Kept away, silenced, while I lived his life, ran his company, raised his son, and even, God forgive me, married his wife. The guilt of this knowledge is what drove me away from you after your mother died. Every time I looked at you, I saw Richard. I couldn't bear it. It was easier to create a rift, to make you leave, than to face what I'd done. I've changed my will to ensure Helen and Rebecca are provided for, but they get nothing from Richard's original holdings. Those, by right, should return to you, Richard's only child and heir. The legal documents for this are with my personal attorney, Malcolm Stern, not Franklin. Franklin is compromised. Be careful who you trust. The men who did this to Richard are still powerful, still on our board. If they realize you know the truth, you'll be in danger. I don't ask for forgiveness. What I've done is unforgivable, but I am trying, at the last, to make it right. The man you thought was your father, Charles Morgan, I read it twice, then a third time, the words blurring through my tears. It was too fantastic to believe, yet it explained so much, the strange resemblance to the man in the photo, the tension I'd always felt with my father, his sudden coldness after my mother died when I was 16. Did you know? I asked Agnes, my voice hardly more than a whisper. She nodded slowly. I suspected. Your mother confided in me once, when she'd had too much wine. Said sometimes she looked at Charles and saw Richard instead, and it terrified her. So my entire life has been a lie. I gestured to the letter. And according to this, my real father might still be alive. It would explain why Helen is terrified, Agnes said. If this comes out, she loses everything. The Richard Morgan holdings would revert to you, and any authority Charles transferred to her would be invalidated. I reached for the journal, flipping through pages of my not-father's handwriting, names, dates, locations, notes about board members, about payments, about a facility called Schweitzer Ruhe. Swiss rest, I translated automatically. A psychiatric hospital. Your father, Charles, was making calls to Switzerland, Agnes confirmed. Helen thought he was having an affair. The USB drive sat on the table, innocuous, yet potentially explosive. I pocketed it for later examination. Agnes, if this is true. I couldn't even finish the thought. The implications were staggering. It explains why Franklin was so insistent you get the box, she said. And why he silenced Helen. He must have known what Charles was planning. A text alert chimed on my phone. Unknown number again, but not Agnes this time. Your hotel room has been searched. Don't return. They're looking for the box. I showed Agnes the screen. Her face paled. You need to leave Boston, she said firmly. Today. Now. And go where? Do what? The enormity of it all was crushing. If my real father is alive, I need to find him. And you will, Agnes promised. But not if they find you first. Who is they? Agnes's eyes were dark with worry. The men who killed Richard. Or thought they did. The men who've been paying to keep him away all these years. Men who now know you have this box. Another text came through. Car waiting outside. Back door. 5 minutes. Agnes stood up. Come. I'll show you out through the service entrance. As we hurried down the hallway, I gripped the strap of my backpack containing the box and its explosive contents. Agnes, I can't just run. I need to confront Helen, talk to Franklin. Daniel. She cut me off sharply. Your father was going to expose powerful men. Instead, he died in an accident and spent decades in a foreign institution. Do you think they'll hesitate to do the same to you? The weight of her words sank in. Then what's the point of all this? Charles gives me evidence I can't use. Not can't use. Agnes corrected as we reached the service exit. Can't use yet. You need allies. You need more evidence. You need to be smarter than Charles was. Outside, a black sedan idled by the curb, its driver invisible behind tinted windows. Who arranged this? I asked Agnes. Not me, she said grimly. But there are others who knew what Charles was doing. People who want the truth to come out. The rear door of the sedan opened. Inside sat Malcolm Stern, the attorney Charles had mentioned in his letter. Mr. Morgan, he said solemnly. We have a lot to discuss and not much time. Boston isn't safe for you anymore. I turned to Agnes, suddenly reluctant to leave the only person from my childhood who'd shown me kindness. Go, she said softly. Find your real father. Find the truth. I hugged her briefly, then slipped into the car. As we pulled away, I saw her small figure receding in the window, one hand raised in farewell. I assume you've read the letter, Malcolm said, his voice gentle but urgent. I nodded, clutching my backpack. Is it true? All of it. I believe so, he replied. Your father, Charles, came to me about a year ago with his suspicions. I helped him gather evidence discreetly. And my real father? Richard. Malcolm's expression was grave. The last confirmed sighting was in 2015. After that, the payments to the Swiss facility stopped. Meaning what? He died? Escaped. That's what we need to find out. Malcolm handed me a passport and a credit card. These are under the name Daniel Richards. Use them to get to Zurich. I have a contact there who can help you access records from Schweitzer Ruhe. My head was spinning. This is insane. 24 hours ago, I was a struggling writer coming to my estranged father's funeral. Now I'm what Jason born. You're the son of Richard Morgan, Malcolm said firmly. A man who was willing to expose corruption and paid for it with his freedom. His brother finally found the courage to make things right. The question is, will you? The sedan slowed near a private airfield outside the city. A small jet waited on the tarmac. This will take you to New York, Malcolm explained. From there, you'll take a commercial flight to Zurich. My contact will meet you. What about you? I need to secure the legal documents proving your identity and claim to Richard's assets. If I move too quickly, it will alert the board. The car stopped. Before I got out, I had to ask, why are you helping me? You were Charles's attorney. Malcolm's eyes were sad but determined. I was Richard's attorney first. I failed him once. I won't fail his son. As I walked toward the plane, the box secure in my backpack and my mind reeling with revelations, I realized I wasn't just leaving Boston. I was leaving behind the life I thought was mine, a life built on lies that had started before I was old enough to remember. Somewhere out there might be my real father, a man who'd been erased and replaced, a man whose only crime was wanting to expose the truth. And now, that mission had fallen to me. The jet engines roared to life as I climbed the stairs. I didn't look back at the city lights of Boston. Instead, I looked forward, toward Europe, toward answers, toward the truth, no matter how devastating it might be. I hadn't come to my father's funeral seeking inheritance, but I'd received one anyway, a legacy of lies and a chance, finally, to uncover the truth. What would you do if you discovered your entire life was based on a lie? Would you risk everything to uncover the truth about your real family, even knowing it might put you in danger?